it was added as an actual trope to the series when they brought back the original Turbo Ranger. His highlight of his entire Ranger career was, "Hey, come here, babe. Let me just tell you something. I used to be a Red Ranger. And you know what happens to me one day? I was baked into a gigantic pizza." Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And on the Japanese side of things, you had Kamen Rider Den-O, which was essentially, the entire thing was stupid beyond belief. After a really serious series like Kabuto, you had the most over-the-top, most ridiculous, most...
Brilliant.
That's the word for it. It was absolutely brilliant. You had a red demon as the main character, a guy called Momotoros. And the way he acted was completely perfect. He could never start a battle until he finished his pose and his heroic monologue, which by about halfway through the series, the monsters kind of coined in that he won't actually fight until he said his monologue, so they actually attack him early, which legally you're not meant to do. You have to wait about 2 minutes while they do their poses, their Megazords combine. Legal issues. I don't really know how it works, but politics, what are you going to do? And more recently, Power Rangers RPM, which was the American adaptation of Engine Sentai Go Ranger. They used the exact same suits, exact same Zords, which were gigantic teddy bears, gigantic red birds, a gigantic flying chicken, no less. And they took all this footage and they thought, you know what, this is going to be our last series, we're just going to cancel Power Rangers after this. So... we're going to do Go Gaga, basically. Have you ever seen Terminator? This is the best way to describe it. An evil machine empire that was developed by America to fight its enemies turned on the entire world when Venjix became sentient, and basically the entire world by the time RPM actually starts is destroyed apart from one city, which is protected by a dome which has the last bit of oxygen that Earth really has. So you have the Power Rangers, really, the stakes are really, really high in this series. This is humanity's last hope. This, if we don't survive, we're all going to perish. And, you know, this is, again, a show, especially in the UK, marketed for 4-year-olds, which is a bit crazy, really.
That's not it.
You had character deaths on screen quite frequently. The only way they were able to get away with this was because of the comedy, which I would like to show you now. There are 2 Power Rangers RPM clips.
Are we showing the first channel?
There should be one called RPM, and there should be one, I think, Meeting with Dr. K. One of them should be Live with Blue Ranger as well, if that helps.
Oh, yeah, I see Blue Ranger, yeah.
Now, this is a Scottish convention, so I would like to introduce you guys to the first ever Scottish Power Ranger.
Oh, God.
Max lines, please.
Look forward to any and all questions regarding the Ranger Bio Series suits, vehicles, and hardware. Anyone? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
What do you mean, what eyes? Right there? The front of our Zords.
They are not eyes. They're optical field scanning sensors for your cockpit's HUD display.
Well, they look like... well, they look like...
they look like eyes. Big, googly anime eyes.
Next.
Sometimes when I morph, I can't help but notice this gigantic explosion right behind me for no apparent reason.
I assume you're referring to the residual energy runoff that is sometimes necessary to clear the suit's biofield channels during...
I'm referring to the 6-story high fireballs, like that one, right there. Now, could that happen to me in the kitchen or something?
Wait more. Is it absolutely 100% necessary that we scream RPM getting gear as Power Rangers?
That's a very good point. Some of us out there are trying to impress chicks. It's definitely not helping.
The vocal call-out is a voice recognition, safety, and security measure.
Well, maybe we can have a bit of a change.
A change?
Like, Rangers to the Rescue, or Ranger Justice Unleashed, maybe?
Justice is an abstract ideological concept. We deal with tangible realities, not justice. You want justice? Read a comic book. Next.
How was that? That played off every single trope you could probably think of. And yes, Power Rangers is super serial. Can we find the Blu-ray, the other?
They played that for gags.
Was it RPM you said?
Yeah.
boy?
Green is the clown and yellow. Oh, she's the girl. So what are you supposed to be?
I'm Scottish!
And as the typical Glaswegian, he goes into battle without thinking.
Was that right? Is he the one that was actually played by an Australian?
He was played by a New Zealander who was in another show called The Tribe, which was really popular on Channel 5.
Yep.
So, it is a fake Glaswegian accent, but I think it works really well.
Watch episode 1 and please spot the accents looking.
There's another absolutely brilliant scene which I couldn't quite find on YouTube. But he used to be a first aid worker, and he worked with a charity in Africa. And what was happening is that these tribes were being moved, from area to area, because white man was stealing their land and all that kind of stuff. So the Blue Ranger thought, you know what, this is some bullshit. So he organizes all the tribes, gets them on all their tribes gear. He dresses up as Braveheart and charges at the first aid workers.
It's also awesome.
I loved him. He was a brilliant character. And we can move on to our next slide. Now, the unsung heroes of our show, the monsters of the week. Now, for the past 60 years, there has been one monster an episode who's been hired, again, off the streets. He's probably trying to feed his family. He's just trying to get by, and he gets onto this. He gets hired by these supervillains, and he's like, okay, right, you defeat these guys, we'll give you some money, shits and giggles, it'll be fun. But, unfortunately, time and time again, at the end of every episode, there's always an unfortunate incident where the monster dies in an explosion.
Because all monsters are made of explodium.
Yes. But, these days, these monsters now have unions. So these days, it's also for budget cuts and things, but, it's for unions. They have to at least get 2 episodes worth of payment for their families before they are sent to die. But at the same time, this also allows your Kamen Riders or Power Rangers to get, their next big toy, which will, be on sale next week if you look in Toys R Us. Which will also be their undoing. But of course, the way around these unions is to hire what I like to call illegal immigrants. These putties, as they are known, are hired, and they are never actually paid. They're just sent into the battlefield, and they get stabbed or shot at, punched in the face, and I really want to start a charity for these guys because someone needs to pay them. Someone needs to pay them. Someone needs to show them love. And I strongly believe that. Now, if we look at our next clip, this is possibly my favorite monster of the week ever. This is from a 1980s series of Kamen Rider.
Shh! I don't know what it is, but you said 1980s and Kamen Riders. Oh.
Now, this was...
Kamen Rider X?
Yes. I'm going to let this clip speak for itself. Everyone, Starfish Hitler. You can also speak Japanese. And the third one. Jumping makes you invincible to bullets.
You take it all the time.
にしている暇はない。待て。空港から去った2人はどこへやった？自分で探してみることだ。くそ。
I don't think they gave Hitler 3 years to be honest.
He died not too long after that, trust me. All hail Starfish Hitler. Before, I would also like to point out, if did any of you see my article in the comic book this year? A Villain's Guide to Tokusatsu?
Oh, I know.
Now, the base is also a very important thing I'd like to point out. Because the city is always being destroyed constantly, and the woods aren't exactly the best place to get supplies, so villains have to be creative. If you are a Starfish Hitler, your base would have to be underwater. If you're an evil witch trying to take over the world, you would obviously make the moon have a nice breathable atmosphere, some gravity, and a base on the moon. Why not? Now, if we could move on to the next slide.
Army couldn't get you.
Now, as I touched earlier on with the comedy, you can't have comedy without a good tragedy at the same time. Now, as I want to say is that because the show is primarily aimed towards a kind of young, pre-teen child audience, the main purpose of the shows these days is to sell toys and make a profit to help with the next year's show. But also, as I said earlier, the fact that it's a tradition between parents to show their kids Kamen Rider, get them into it, that you still have people from late teens to throughout their entire lives catching it on a Sunday morning, watching with their kids, or just because they love watching it as a kid themselves and they still love the series. So in order to keep the parents interested, as I said earlier, they have their big boobed porn actresses, but they also have decent storylines as well. No, don't quote me on this, but a lot of them are really decent. This character here is called Ryo. He was a very, very tragic character who ended his villainy committing suicide. When he was a 4-year-old kid, his parents were killed by a demonic dragon, and throughout throughout Ryo's life, he kept on being tormented by this dragon, and Ryo kept on believing that I need to be strong to survive. I need to fuck everyone else, and I need to focus on my needs. I'm the most important thing in the world. So in doing this, he ends up finding out about Ringi. And this Ringi really focuses on the anger, the torment of the soul. And through this, he gained his lion armor. And with his Ringi, he was able to summon an undead demon army, which would then collect fear. And this fear, in turn, made him stronger, but also made him go deeper and deeper into insanity. Near the end of the series, what happened to Ryo was, again, very tragic. The dragon, in the human form of Long, comes to him, offering him the strongest power he has ever known. Throughout the past 40 episodes, he's beaten time and time again by a bunch of teenagers who are learning kung fu from gigantic, anthropomorphic, furry elephants and things.
As you did.
It's Japan, what do you expect? Do you expect them to have any form of decency?